If you have a true scary story that you'd like to see featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. This happened to me and two of my friends back when we were in high school. It was nearing the end of the school year, which meant not only were our last finals right around the corner, but so was prom. We were seniors, and I unfortunately missed going my junior year due to a family emergency, so I was not going to let anyone or anything stop me or ruin my night. My friends Marissa, Heidi, and I all went and picked out dresses together, and not only coordinated colors with our dates, but with each other. We all met up at my place to get ready, then our dates met us at a local park to take pictures and hang out shortly before the dance started. While we were there, Heidi pulled out her purse and showed us that her mom had bought her a few shooters. In case anyone doesn't know what this is, it's just those little mini bottles of liquor. But she was supposed to keep them at home. Her mom let her drink occasionally, but only when she was at home and within her sight. She passed one out to all of us, and we quickly took the shots and got rid of the evidence. Afterwards, we headed to the school. The prom itself was a blast with your normal teenage fun. We danced, took pictures, made my ex mad, all stupid fun. It was probably close to the end of the dance, so I think it was just a combination of people being worn out and teenage angst that some people started getting a bit more rowdy. Some girls started shouting at Marissa, so we all joined in to try and just get her to leave with us so we didn't get into any trouble. Thankfully, she went pretty easily when Heidi bribed her with more shots. She said we could go back to her place and have some more drinks and just hang out, and that was our plan anyways. The three of us girls piled into my car, and the guys said they would meet us there in their car after they went home to change. We left the school probably feeling a bit too invincible. Again, we were stupid teenagers doing some pretty stupid stuff. Physically, I felt fine though. I know I shouldn't have, and I don't condone our actions that night, but we had only had the one shot before the dance and nothing since, so I wasn't even buzzed. We all got in the car with me driving, Marissa in the passenger seat, and Heidi in the back. We expected a nice ride as close friends celebrating our high school years, but that wouldn't be the case. I stopped at a four-way intersection at the same time as a car that was coming from the opposite direction. I flashed my lights at them so they could go, but they continued to sit there. After flashing my lights again and no movement, I decided to go ahead and turn left. They didn't have a turn signal on, so I assumed they were going straight, which is why I tried to let them go first. After I turned, I then noticed that the car had turned behind me too. I was more focused on my friends and driving, however, so I made a sort of mental note and continued talking and singing. It didn't last long though, as I noticed the car was following pretty close, so I pointed it out to my friends. Marissa, being the aggressive type, told me to tap my brakes to get them to back off, and normally I would, but for some reason, I kept telling myself I shouldn't. Now, it was pretty dark at this point, so I couldn't make out much of the car other than the front of it looked like it was dark, maybe black or dark blue or gray. But we quickly learned why they may have been tailgating me when the lights kicked on. Again, between it being dark and not really paying much attention, I didn't notice there were lights on top of the car. In a slight panic, I pulled over and told the girls to just keep quiet. I turned off the music and immediately went to reach for my purse that was in the back passenger side. I had already rolled down my window by the time the cop approached my side of the car and immediately shined his bright flashlight right into my front seat. I turned around quickly to look at them and greet them, but they then put the flashlight right in my face. I squinted and put my hand up in a force of habit when there is something bright in your face. But the cop immediately got aggressive and yelled at me to put my hand down. It startled me, but I did as he said and tried to apologize and mention the light. He then pointed it towards the back at Heidi and then kind of laughed and claimed he was just messing with us. I looked over at Marissa real quick and saw the WTF look on her face and quickly looked back at the cop. He asked if we were leaving the ball and laughed again, and I told him we were actually headed home from our prom. At this point, he was still shining his flashlight around in my car, so I couldn't quite see his face. I could see a slight outline and could see his teeth, so I could at least tell he was smiling. He made some kind of back in my day comment, I don't remember what exactly, then laughed again. We all just sat there awkwardly, and I really wanted to ask why he pulled us over, but I didn't have it in me, and since he seemed to be in a good mood, maybe he would just forget or let us go. I wasn't speeding, I used my signal when I turned, and none of us were like hanging out of the window or screaming either. As he cleared his throat, he leaned down to have his head closer to my window and asked, "Have you ladies been drinking?" Okay, now, I know how some people may respond to this, but I was an 18-year-old girl at the time. I was underage, and we definitely had something to drink. It was literally one shot each of us, and it was several hours earlier, so I felt fine, but between the night so far, being pulled over, the adrenaline and anxiety was high, and I was beginning to freak out again. However, my response was immediately no. He leaned in closer and his voice became a bit more stern, and he said, "Now don't lie to me, I'm not stupid. I can smell the alcohol in this car." I began having an internal meltdown, worried I was going to go to jail and my parents would find out, but I immediately started pleading. I fessed up and told him I just had one shooter and that it was earlier that night and we were going straight home so there wouldn't be any more, and apologized. Marissa tried telling me to shut up, but once I started, I just couldn't turn it off. After a few minutes of my pathetic pleas, the cop stopped me and told me that while he appreciated me telling the truth, he was going to have to arrest all of us and have the car towed. Heidi then began begging with me to let us go with a ticket, and Marissa was more seeming to argue with us. Then he did that ear-piercing whistle, making us all stop and look back at him. He then leaned down, putting his arms on my window, and said, "I'd hate to ruin your girls' night, so maybe we can work something out." I was expecting him to just give me a ticket, which still would have sucked, but at least I was much more willing to tell my parents about that. However, he had something else in mind. He mentioned an empty building with a pretty empty area. It was where an old mall had closed, and he asked us to follow him there and just have some fun for a bit. Forget the ticket or going to jail. I was even more terrified at this point. Was this cop really suggesting what I thought he was suggesting? I was frozen at this point, not knowing how to react. What would happen if I told him no? Would he then arrest me? But, of course, Marissa, being her normal aggressive self, took over. She leaned down pretty far to look at this guy and pretty much challenged him and questioned him. Some of the berating from her included, "You know we're minors, right? We just told you we were coming from prom. I'm recording this, so why don't you explain in detail what exactly you wanted to do with us? Why did you even pull us over? Don't you have to give us like a breath test before you can do anything? Ash, don't get out of the car. Don't do anything unless he makes you take a test. What's your name anyways? I want your name and badge number. The cop got pretty quiet at that point and then tried laughing again and said we were pretty smart girls. He tried to play it off about testing us or something and then said we were free to go, but to just be careful and go straight home. He never told us his name or badge number. We waited for him to get back in his car, and when he didn't drive off, I decided to go. Part of me was worried that he might follow us, but I just wanted to get home at this point. The guys obviously beat us to Heidi's, and we told them what happened. They thought it was really suspicious too, but other than them, we never told anyone about the interaction. I myself was too worried my parents would be mad at me or something. So, fast forward a few months after we graduated, there was something on the news about someone impersonating a cop, and when they pulled over women, they would make suggestive comments and threaten them with erroneous charges until they agreed to his demands. One lady dared to challenge him, much like Marissa did, but he actually grabbed her by the arm, leaving marks, and tried to open her door. They said she was able to drive away and she immediately went to a police station to report it. But when she explained everything, the officer she talked to wasn't convinced it was a real officer. Then they started getting more reports and they all aligned. Someone also was able to see the vehicle and it was all dark with no markings, like it was an unmarked cop car. But the problem with that is that the state I live in, those are prohibited, which led them to believe even more that it wasn't real. Unfortunately, he must have realized they were onto him because the reports stopped and they never caught the guy. I told Marissa and Heidi about this, and Marissa was confident it was probably the same guy. The scheme and location all matched what we experienced, so I'm pretty confident it was the same guy as well. The situation alone freaked me out, but when I saw that, I was even more terrified that this was real. This happened to many women, but then I wondered how many more it happened to that didn't report it, or even worse, how many poor women fell for it and followed through. I'm an adult now, and much smarter, so when I do have an interaction with someone in law enforcement, I make sure to take note as many details as possible and get their name. You just can never be too careful, no matter who the person may appear to be. I went to a lot of parties in my 20s, so when a friend invited me to another friend's party, there was no part of me that would have said no. The host, Danny, was more so just an acquaintance to me, but I wasn't going to pass up free access to alcohol and entertainment. The party was supposed to be at Danny's great aunt's house, as he claimed he was house sitting, and he wanted to take full advantage of it. However, you can imagine my surprise when I pulled up with my friend and Danny and the house was boarded up and abandoned. I asked them if this was the right place and he said yes. He then explained his great aunt had recently passed and she had been living in a care facility, so no one kept up with her home, so it just sat empty. He said since it was still in the family, he thought it would be a good idea to use it for parties. But what kind of party can 3 guys in an abandoned house have? I know none of us had brought any refreshments. I'm sure they noticed I had a soured or disappointed look on my face and tried getting me to loosen up, saying more people were on their way. Shortly after, we did have a few more people arrive. there was another car with 3 girls in it, one of which I knew from high school actually, and a truck with another friend of mine and his girl, and a guy in the bed. The others got out carrying a couple cases of beer and cups, and we all walked up to the door where Danny was. Then we watched as he went behind one of the bushes near the door, heard what sounded like a metal on metal scraping, then he came back out with a key. He then went and unlocked the door, slamming his shoulder into it as it appeared to be jammed, and then we all were waved in. The house, however, was in better condition than expected. It was still fully furnished, at least for the most part. It makes sense now as to why Danny had lugged some old stereo with us. That way we weren't sitting in silence and darkness. The lights didn't work either, so the girls had brought a bunch of candles and flashlights. Despite the location and lack of details I was given, the party was actually pretty fun, and we all had a good time. We listened to music and drank. Someone brought a deck of cards and Twister, and it was hella funny watching the girls drunkenly try to determine which hand was left versus right. At one point, everyone started to wind down while a few were trying to make a house out of the cards. I got bored and decided to just walk around the property, inside and out, to check it out. Yeah, I may have been a little nosy, but it's not like I was a thief or anything. I legitimately just liked exploring new places. So, as I walked around outside, I noticed where part of the house jutted out to the right. It caught my attention because it wasn't big enough to be a garage, but I didn't remember anything being on that side other than a closet and a bathroom. Not to mention, the part that went out was all connected and the bathroom and closet were not. This had to be a separate room. I made a mental note of this and continued my walk around the house. There was nothing else particularly interesting, but I was still curious about that room, so I went back inside. I checked the bathroom first, but had a feeling it wasn't connected to it since it was further back than where it was positioned outside. Then I checked the closet. It seemed pretty silly at first when I opened it and just saw a few long coats hanging and a mop and broom leaning against the wall. I was about to close the door when something told me to look again. So I moved around the boxes on the shelf above and didn't even see a door or anything, but then I pushed the hanging coats as far against the wall as I could. Then I pulled out my phone and started looking at the rear wall. I knocked on it and, wouldn't you know it, it sounded hollow, like there was nothing behind it. Then I traced around the edges and could feel a slight dip in the wall. It was like someone plastered and painted over a door. While I was doing this, Danny scared me by coming up behind me and asked what I was doing. I explained what I had seen outside and what I just noticed in this closet, and he was just as surprised as me. I moved out of the way and he went and examined it too and came out scratching his head. He said he had only been here on occasions, but it was when he was younger, so he never realized it until now. Before I could ask him what we should do, he walked away into the kitchen, then came back out with one of those meat tenderizers and a butter knife. I grabbed a flashlight and held it for him as he chipped away at the closet door. It, of course, started getting the attention of the others, and we all joked about what we were going to find. Danny finally got a good portion around, so he pulled the rest down with his hands, and behind that wall was a small door with a very antique-looking doorknob. And of course, it was locked. Danny tried to just break it, but the angle wasn't right for it. When I say this door was small, I mean it was about half the height of the closet, which we were already having to lean over a bit to stand in. But what other option did we have? We were all about to start looking for another key, but Danny, again, just started smashing the knob with the tenderizer, and soon enough, it broke off. There was nothing else holding that door closed, so after he broke it off, it slowly creaked open an inch or two. We were all hesitant to go in, but Danny finally got on his knees and crawled through. I followed him, as well as a few others, but most of the girls stayed behind. This room was not something I would expect to see in the home of a little old lady. This looked like some kind of sacrificial room. There was a large circle with symbols around it painted on the floor in red. The circle was then outlined with candles, and they had all been burned and melted nearly to the floor. The walls were covered in writings in black and red. Some of it looked like scriptures, maybe. Others I didn't recognize and seemed to just be gibberish. There was a single wooden chair in the corner of the room, facing the corner, but otherwise, there was nothing else in there. Except for one thing. There was a single photo of a young woman. The photo had clearly been ripped or torn so that only this woman was in it. But it was clear that she was looking at someone to her left, and she looked happy. Based on the color of the photo and how she was dressed, I'd have to guess it was taken in the 40s. Danny said he had no idea who the woman was, and I had no reason not to believe him. He said his great aunt was a blonde, and this person clearly had dark hair, so it wasn't her. Then we all started getting that uneasy feeling. The mood had started to shift as we all started to see what this room was for, and Danny looked just as confused. He started swearing how he had no idea this was here and why anyone would do this. He said his great aunt was super religious and didn't, or couldn't maybe, believe this could have been done by her. But then the room got really cold. I didn't mention this earlier, but this was in the early summer. It was already getting pretty hot, and there was no AC in this house either. So to have a random cold chill was eerie. The girls quickly left the room at that point, and I was about ready to follow, but I waited to see what they did. As we stood around waiting to see what Danny wanted to do, we heard one of the girls yelp, so we all left the room. We went out and one of the girls said it felt like someone slightly grabbed her ponytail and tugged it, which freaked her out. There was no way to calm them down, and the three that arrived together and the other girl all got in their car and refused to leave it. I could tell Danny was pretty freaked out too, but didn't want to admit it, so he suggested we leave too if the girls were going. We all packed up and left, and the ride back was pretty silent. No one really said much, and I didn't really know what to say, to be honest. We kind of went about our life after that. Nothing creepy happened, no one was cursed or anything, but I even started hanging out with Danny more. We were both at a party together months later, and something came up that reminded me of it. So I asked him if he ever found out who that person was or anything about that room. He seemed like he didn't really want to talk about it, but he did tell me that he asked his mom about the woman in the photo, and she basically interrogated him on where he found it and told him never to bring it up again around certain people. I don't remember who. But that was about all he told me. I don't know if he really found out more or if that's all he knew, but he definitely seemed uncomfortable talking about it, so I never brought it up again. If I was alone, I would have taken pictures to share with you all because it was really creepy, but I didn't out of respect for Danny since I hardly knew him. But based on his reaction to it all, I'm pretty sure something bad happened there, and his family may be keeping secrets. My friends and I loved going to this local festival our county held every year in July. They had live music on an open field where you could bring your own blankets, chairs, and drinks. They had some fair games and food, drinks, and craft booths set up for you to shop to your heart's content. They were never a bad time. Between the single people, the groups of friends like us, and even the families with kids and older couples perusing the crafts, everyone seemed to be in high spirits and looked after one another. That's exactly what we were expecting when we went there this time. There were 5 of us that went together: Ashton, Nevaeh, Tanner, Paige, and myself. We brought a couple blankets in a small cooler with our beverages of choice. We just lounged around talking and just enjoyed the electric atmosphere that surrounded us. The band was full of energy, and everyone in the crowd was cheering them on for more. After the band was done, there was going to be an intermission before the finale. The finale was going to be fire jugglers, so they had to set up an area in front of the stage where there was a small fire pit. While they were setting up, my friends and I walked around the booths, got ourselves something to eat, and even played a few games, betting on who would do the best and who would fail miserably. Once it started getting darker, we heard someone talking through their audio system from the stage and decided to start making our way back to the field to settle down again with more drinks and entertainment. When we got back there, we danced to the music and waited for the show to start. It was nearing the end of the main events, so there were already a lot of people that were drunk, or should I say, under some kind of influence. So we all laughed as we watched other people being silly with their friends too. Then the lights on the stages dimmed, telling us that they were ready to start. But it wasn't dark for long. The stage came alive with swirling flames and dancers going to the rhythm of the song. It was very impressive and beautiful. We all watched in awe as the crowd cheered them on as they landed each successful stunt one after another. There was one particular guy I noticed on several occasions that was enthralled by the entertainers. He was whistling and clapping for them. He would holler out wanting them to do more, all while dancing and pretty much headbanging to their music. He was obviously drunk, but enjoying himself, and he wasn't being a nuisance to anyone around him either, so no one was bothering him, of course. Then the show came to an end, and many people started packing up, mostly the ones with kids. My friends and I were all still sitting on our blanket, talking and deciding on if we wanted to stick around longer or if we should go too. We started gathering our stuff, but a few of us still wanted to go check out some of the booths. While we were waiting for Tanner and Paige to finish getting their stuff packed up, I was looking around, taking in the atmosphere. They had the music playing again, and there were some people laying in the grass together. I saw the families leaving with kids, excitedly talking about their day, and I even spotted the man from earlier that was next to us. He was spinning around and dancing, slowly making his way towards the stage. The fire pit up front was still going, and I assumed since they weren't the ones to set it up, they weren't going to be putting it out either. But it was contained, and people were taking notice of it to either avoid it, or they were using it as a backdrop for their selfies. I even thought it would be nice to get a picture of all of us with it too. But then the happy and euphoric moment would brutally end. I watched the drunk man climb on the stage as he continued dancing and singing. I instantly knew this wasn't going to end well. and I looked around for anyone I saw him with. There was a girl and a guy that was standing with him during the show, but now I didn't see them anywhere, not even by the stage. I thought to myself, I needed to find someone in charge to let them know so they could get him down, but I was out of time. I turned to mention it to my friends, and the man yelled out something and jumped right into the fire. The air filled with screams and gasps as we watched him land in it, and the flames engulfed him. Ashton, Tanner, and I ran towards the man, hoping to be able to help somehow, as we yelled at our other friends to get help. Before we reached him, he had stood up and started screaming. He managed to get out of the pit, but he was still on fire. Knowing how intoxicated he was and how he danced around with a bottle, I'm sure he spilled it on himself too, making this so much worse. The man ran around screaming for help and flailing his arms. The crowd of people that were forming recoiled in horror, desperate to keep him away from them, but no one was doing anything to help him. As he ran towards people, they would shove him away, or he would run into a piece of building, causing it to begin a new flame that people tried to put out. Tanner and I were trying to catch him to make him drop on the ground, but he wouldn't stop moving, as one might expect. Your mind is already altered by the alcohol, and now you're in pain and you don't know what to do. I thought about it afterwards, and God, I can't even imagine how you would handle that kind of situation. Tanner actually ran after the guy, tackling him, which also caused him to get burned, but we at least got him to the ground. That's when a few of us started patting him down and tried to get him to respond to us while we waited for help. We were in the middle of a field. We didn't have much we could really help with or do. I could only pray that he was still alive, as he wasn't responding. I was frozen with fear as everything around me started moving slowly. People were screaming all around. The once lively festival grounds now looked like a hellish landscape with small fires everywhere. Those agonizing screams from the man were playing in my mind until the wails of sirens finally drowned out my own thoughts. They started checking his vitals, at least confirming he was still alive, as they got him on the stretcher to wheel him off. We watched as they loaded him up and left, leaving the rest of us with these haunting memories of what just unfolded in front of us. We all tried to move on and shake off the events we just witnessed, but I don't think anyone could really move past it. Tanner especially. He possibly saved that man's life by tackling him to the ground and patting out the fire. He wasn't talking much, so we all thought it best to leave. I know it was a pretty restless night for me, but I felt bad for Tanner too. I wanted to add that the accident was covered on the news. The man had third-degree burns all over his body that also affected his eyesight. I was thankful to hear he survived and told Tanner about it too, but that night still makes me sick to think about. That festival was always a lot of fun for me and my friends, and now that will always be a memory of how an innocent night of fun can quickly turn to chaos and change lives forever. So that, my friends, was another scary story collection, and it's me again, not Raven. Sorry about the outro last week, even though he does a better job, so whichever, it still works. But I hope you did enjoy these stories today. Reading through them, especially the one with the weird room that's creepy. Can't say I've ever explored abandoned places or places that are closed down. There are some places that I would like to go in and see, but at the same time, I don't know. Yeah, like, how would you react to something like that? That would be, I don't know, weird. I guess that's tame or more tame than some of the other things people have found or experienced. I don't know. Those out there that do the urbex stuff like as a regular thing, good on you, because I don't think I'm that brave. I don't know if our current place has like a attic type thing. I know our last place did, but I don't even think I'd be willing to go through something like that. Just bugs alone, I think, would be my problem, but who knows what else is up there. Do you guys have a crawl space or something like that you have never been in or have rarely been in that you don't like to go in? Or another abandoned place or something? And have you found anything interesting? Those are the stories I want to hear. So leave a comment with that information, or if you have a story, feel free to send it in as well. And in the meantime, if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing if you haven't already. You can also leave that comment as mentioned. Let me know your thoughts on the video, or if you have anything else you want to share. It's open for you guys. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic week. And until next time, take care.